we're going to start our session. I would like to invite our panelists on stage. So please, Mr. Artur Coimbra de Oliveira, Director of the Department of Broadband, Minister of Science, Technology, Innovation and Communication of Brazil. Mr. Jorge Sequeira Picado, Managing Director of the Costa Rican Investment Promotion Agency, CINDE. Please come on stage. Thank you. Yes, please, sit. Federico Tapja Perez, Chief of Staff of Invest Chile from Chile. And Fernando Augusto Loureiro, Senior Director of Public Policy and Government Affairs of Intel. And to start today's session, we would like to introduce Mario Cimoli, the Deputy Executive Secretary of the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean of the UN, Mario Cimoli. So I will ask for a warm applause for all of them, and we will going to start the Invest in Latin America session. Thank you.
Hello. Good morning to everybody. Good morning to our speakers. Clearly, our region is a little bit far away from Dubai than other parts of the world, and it's a pleasure to have you here. And you know, this is the second time that we organize this meeting to give the opportunity of the region of Latin America and Caribbean to open to the new investment and new situations that have to do with a country like Emirates that have an enormous experience on trade and investment. I think that this year is a year of investment, that there is a lot of uncertainty. The flows of investment in Latin America are not so huge, so important like was in other 10 years before, when there was the price of commodity that flowed the investment clearly in a strong position in the region. Today is a completely different processes. There is an uncertainty. There is a new economic and trade situation that could affect the region as a whole. The new data that we have in the region is not very good recently, but we have the enormous opportunity. And here we have bring two experts that have to do with the issue of digital economy, because the region needs to be modernized, the region need to be more open to new type of investment, not only natural resources, but there is an enormous opportunity to do that. That is the reason that we have here from Brazil, from Intel, people that are occupied on and dedicated to digital economy. And we have also the agency for investment like Costa Rica and Chile that are two important actors. Recently there was an important investment of Emirates in Chile, and there is an important situation. Now, I want to give the floor to Cecilia, because we want that the speeches to the countries, to the people, that you have the opportunity to know what's happening in the region in your view. We can have an intervention later on.
Hello. Hello again. Well, so I would like to start first to ask our panelists, because I introduced you like very shortly. So it would be great if you can introduce yourself first, so the audience know really which country do you come from and what's your organization. So please, starting with you, Artur.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Artur. I am the Director of Broadband in the Ministry of Communications in Brazil. And my role is essentially to design policies to expand connectivity in Brazil, as well as IT infrastructure that's useful and necessary for a digital transformation. Brazil has recently launched its digital transformation plan, and it's data privacy legislation. So those are important steps to attract more investment in those areas, and I'm dealing with a significant part of those policies.
Okay, thank you very much. I think during these days we hear a lot about digital infrastructure, and here we have the opportunity to talk with one policy maker in digital infrastructure in Latin America, so that's a great privilege. Please, Mr. Sequeira.
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Jorge Sequeira. I'm the Managing Director of CINDE, Costa Rica's investment promotion agency. We focus on certain strategic sectors, including the life sciences sector, but most importantly today, we invest very heavily in attracting IT companies. Costa Rica's economy has completely transformed over the years from an agricultural economy to a higher value-added and technological economy, and the knowledge economy. In fact, our exports today are mostly IT and IT-related and life sciences. So very interested in learning from my colleagues here, and thank you very much for having us.
Please, thank you. Federico from Chile, please.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Federico Tapja. I'm Chief of Staff in Invest Chile, the foreign investment promotion agency. We're a new agency. We only have 2 years. And also, same as Costa Rica, we are working very hard in order to transform our country and to transform our country into a country that attracts technology, that attracts more value into our economy, to attract knowledge. And that's why we're here, to share and to learn from our colleagues as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's great. We have two successful experiences of countries in Latin America that attracted lots of investment and really managed to improve their economies. Now we have the presence of a firm. That's also something really important, to have the private sector working together with the public sector in order to improve countries' economies. So please, Fernando.
Thank you, Cecilia. Good morning, everyone. My name is Fernando Loureiro. I work for Intel Corporation, responsible for public policy and government relations for Latin America and Canada. I'm based in Brazil.
Okay, thank you.
To introduce and to have a question for you, we have part of the government, the first one, two agencies, one private sector. Now, it seems to be that investment in the region are not so dynamic. We waited to do that. There is an important experience. Of course, Costa Rica and Chile are both important experience. And Brazil is beginning recently a new experience. My question is, what do you think about the next future? Which are the best important policy to attract investment that the region need to be implemented? First, and the second one, is country by themselves, each country alone can be the platform, or we need some type of integration among countries in the region? I don't know, we can begin from our friend from Brazil there.
Thank you, Mario. That's a very good question. If you talk specifically about Brazil, we probably have two great challenges. The first one is to stabilize our macroeconomic scenario, which is being done right now. And the second one is to implement a series of microeconomic reforms to improve the investment environment in Brazil. But I believe that Latin America lacks, specifically South America, lacks some more integration. We have like Mercosur, which is a good start, but it should be strengthened, and we should try to make South America a bigger common market as it is, not too concentrated different market alliances. And well, specifically Brazil has border with 10 out of 12 countries in South America, And for us, it's very important to establish coordination with other countries and specific agreements, and makes our legislation more compatible and trade as much as we can with everyone.
And I have a question. What do you think about digital economy in Latin America and Brazil? Because Brazil is too large. But if, for example, arriving investment in Brazil, for indirect investment, and want to send one product to the other countries in Latin America, to Argentina, it's quite impossible. There is no guarantee. How you can integrate it can the region to attract foreign direct investment there for the local market if there is no integration in digital infrastructure?
Well, actually, there is a very good integration in terms of digital infrastructure. There are companies, and we've got at least 3 different physical networks that cross South American countries. What we need to do is to sit down with each one of our neighbors and establish clear rules for those exchange of information and exchange of services and of goods, to make it more easily doable. But in terms of physical integration, I think we surpassed that challenge.
Yes, thank you. In order to answer your question about the dynamics of how foreign direct investment into Latin America is going, and I would speak obviously about Costa Rica. I'd like to be disruptive in the sense of, we would have to start by asking, how are we measuring, foreign direct investment? And is US dollars or any currency for that matter the way that we should continue measuring foreign direct investment? And my case is that it shouldn't. And I'll give you our own example. In 2017, Costa Rica had about $3 billion worth of foreign direct investment, according to the central bank. Last year, it was $2.6 billion. So you would say, well, you had a bad year, you went back. Yet, we had a record year in terms of employment. We generated almost 14,000 new jobs. So if you ask me, from the country's perspective, what's really important? Is it the job creation, or is it how many dollars are coming into the country? And in what form are those dollars coming into the country? As we move more and more, and Chile's case is like ours, into the services economy, really, the dollar amount becomes more relevant. I mean, Amazon has in Costa Rica 8,500 people, okay? Yet, they've invested very few $1 million, maybe $20 or $30 million over all those years. Why? Because these companies come and they rent office space. They just need to buy computers and that type of thing. So, really the dollar amount is not as representative as it used to be maybe 2 or 3 decades ago, and it might still be very representative in certain economies that are very much based in infrastructure or minerals or that type of thing. But for those economies that are moving more towards the knowledge economy, the digital economy, the US dollar amount becomes pretty much irrelevant. In fact, from the CINDE perspective, we don't even measure it anymore. We just take the data from the central bank. We just measure, among many other things, but the most important one, of course, would be employment. Then the second question you asked was, what are the key factors to be successful in attracting investment in this digital economy? And I mean, we can talk about many, many things. Of course, connectivity is fundamental. In general, infrastructure, investment security, your security from the legal standpoint and any other standpoint, those are all elements. But if I had to choose the 3 main ones, there would be talent, talent, and talent. I mean, it's all about talent. We say that data is the new oil in this century. Yes, that's for companies. For countries, the new oil is talent. If you have enough talent, the companies will come, because there's such a shortage of talent, globally speaking, that for emerging economies like ours, with small populations, again, relatively speaking, it's almost infinite, the potential that you have in terms of creating jobs if you develop the talent. So I know we'll talk later in this panel about that, but so what should be those policies, those tactics, those ideas around generating that talent pool so that the companies can continue coming to our economies?
But in relation to the other part of Latin America, Costa Rica is enough by itself, or is needed to be more integrated with Central America, to have more market, more network, more possibility? What do you think about?
But I'm sorry, could you repeat the first part?
Costa Rica is necessary to have also more integration with other countries in Central America, or it is enough to have only one Costa
Yes,
Rica
sorry,
and
I
the
forgot-
policy?
I
Because
forgot that
you know
last
you
thing.
have market, you have migration problem, you have everything that can be solved with investment could be one of the instruments. What do you think about?
Yes, thank you very much, and I apologize for not answering that last part. I believe it has the answer to that question has two parts. One, should we be promoting ourselves for investment as a region? And I guess you would have to ask that to every different countries because we're so different one from another. It's like we're completely different from our neighbors. You're from Honduras, El Salvador, their value proposition is completely different from ours. We each have our strengths and our weaknesses. So that, I think, wouldn't make a lot of sense to try to go and attract investment together. But from the other, the other side of the other part of the answer to that question is, as a local market, does it make sense to attract companies? Talking about a regional, yes. For example, for Costa Rica, it would be very important to be part of the Pacific Alliance, so that if an investor comes to Costa Rica, he can think of Chile, Colombia, Mexico, and Peru as their market, together with Costa Rica, not only Costa Rica. So yes, thinking from the local market, accessible market perspective, yes, it makes sense, but not from the perspective of trying to attract that investment to come into Costa Rica. At least in our case, up until today, all those over 300 multinational companies that are operating in Costa Rica, they're not there for the local market. They're there, like Intel is, not to sell locally, but to serve the global markets out of Costa Rica.
Chile. Chile is one of the cases that is really interesting in Latin America. It's one of the most successful cases. And recently there was an important investment of Emirates there that you can announce here and was an important part. And Chile is a country that is not only about natural resources and services. Could you explain how is your position with your country and the integration with the regional area?
Sure. First of all, about the investment from Dubai ports, that is certainly something that we hope that creates a trend from this part of the world into Chile. We know and we're sure that infrastructure, connectivity, and logistics, of course, is something that our region has a lot to offer to this part of the world. The work that has been done at the governmental level, embassy, consulate, Pro-Chile, Invest Chile, has been very comprehensive in order to achieve this investment that was closed last week. Was a $500+ million investment in two ports in Chile. That being said, in talking about integration, we're sure that we have to pursue that path. Chile, as well as Peru, Colombia, Mexico, we have the Pacific Alliance, which represents the thinking that we're seeing for as a region. But being seen as a region is one thing. Integration, of course, is a natural path to go to. But we also have other challenges that we have to focus. Those challenges are mainly to diversify our export metrics, and also to bring better and more investment into the country, and not only to the central part of the country, which is our capital, Santiago. The challenge is to bring investment in technology, in more value-added type of investments, and to bring those investments to other parts and to the regions of Chile. We recently announced and inaugurated a facility in Temuco, down the south of Chile, a company who hired 300 plus engineers from local universities to create and to produce software that will be exported to 15 different countries. Those are the type of investments that we're looking for and that we are trying to promote and to bring to Chile. And also, in order to attract more and better investment, we have to work closely with other governmental bodies. There is a new Ministry of Technology and Innovation was recently created during this administration. We're working closely with them in order to early detect this type of investments that we want to attract, as well as creating a private type of mindset for the institution that we're working on. We have CRMs like the private sector is. We bridge our work and use technology in order to early detect investments, and we're going from promotion to attraction, which are two different things basically. Promotion is to sell the country, why Chile, but the next step is to early detect the needs of companies and to pitch them our country in a specific way.
And I want to make a question about, there is a combination, recently there was, Chile has attracted a lot of investment in terms of sustainable energy. And recently there is a project by Italian company Enel and Chinese one about electromobility. Do you think that cities like Santiago or other cities that are conglomerated has to be a target for the attraction of a new investment, or we have to remain about the level of sectors?
Well, in terms of the first thing about renewable energy, back in 2014, only 5%, around 5% of the total energy production was renewable, only 5%. Today, it's around 20%. So the substantial growth was related mainly to two things: the price of the energy, which was quite interesting at that time, and secondly, the costs for the investment and for installing this type of capacity were reduced dramatically. Plus, new regulations and laws that were passed, of course, created an incentive for the actual scenario. And in relation to electromobility, we think that, of course, Santiago has a lot to offer. 7 million inhabitants are living there, but again, we're trying to bring those type of investment to other cities. And the same example that I was using before, Temuco, was recently awarded by the World Bank through a specific project, working with the private sector to be a pilot city for a smart city. And that was announced just recently, a couple of weeks ago, and the city is going to be operated by using top technology, and to have that model to be exported to other cities within Chile and then to the rest of Latin America.
And I want to go to the private sector. Clearly, we have Intel that has an enormous experience also with Costa Rica. Today, the path that Costa Rica has about new manufacturing sector exporting leader country in the region, about medical instruments, something is an history that began with Intel in the country. What do you think about how you see the region, how you see the capability of the region to attract investment in new sector, new digital, new areas that is necessary? Many times when you see the region only exporting natural resources. How is your view about that?
Thanks, Mario. Well, I think that we do have a challenge nowadays in Latin America, not only Latin America, but in emerging economies, developing economies. The early decade of course, the technology industry. I'm talking about the technology ICT sector industry. The big deal, the big opportunities were for digital inclusion, the devices that were there. So the target countries were exactly the emerging economies, the developing countries, Latin America among them. And then the technology that we have today at that time was promises. So the market was developing economies. Now, today, what were promised technologies that are now mature, such as the AI, big data, IoT, virtual reality, so on and so forth, the target for the technology sector or the ICT companies are on the mature economies, the developed economies. They are the early adopters, and they have capital to invest first in these new technologies. So the second question is also what we need to do to be relevant. And then I think that the opportunities reside in exactly this kind of a more integration in the region. So not only the Mercosur or the Pacific Alliance, but really we need to have a digital agenda that's a kind of Pan-American to give a scale to do that. And then government is really key. Public policy is really key to put back in the radar Latin America and other emerging developing economies. Why and how? I think connectivity, for sure, is the first thing. And being early adopters in 5G, I think will be very necessary for this country. It's a challenge, but it's necessary. And the infrastructure, besides connectivity, is to attract data centers. And with the 5Gs can be, again, another opportunity for these countries and our region, where the need to have a data center close to the devices, close to the edge, to get a data due to the latency of 5G create, is a big opportunity. So second is the trust in the use of the digital capabilities. So then we are talking about the data privacy, protection. Brazil just passed the legislation. Chile has a legislation. Chile is discussing also, but it's there. Argentina. But we do not have really comprehensive framework in Latin America, for instance. So that would be a good idea. Cybersecurity is a concern for the industry, a concern for the users. So it's a framework that for Latin America would be interesting. So then in the kind of a trust side. And the third pillar, and I agree totally with Jorge, is the skills. But the skills we can have a debate, is qualified skills. Skills for developers, a skill for users. We know that developers will be concentrated in few, even countries. And the users, I mean, what kind of skills we are talking about. So it's a different challenge. But at the end of the day, I think that for Latin America and for emerging countries, they need to be there to put the infrastructure to get these investments, at least if not in the first wave, in the second wave. It's a must.
Okay, thank you. And to continue with that, Fernando, I would like to know, because as Mario mentioned, there's a successful story with Intel and Costa Rica in the past, and we always at ICLAC, we mentioned that cooperation with public and private sector is really important. So I would like to know are there some kind of agreements or policies that as a company, do you think that are very good to invest in a country? So what kind of cooperation or agreements do you think that are available for you as a company or from a perspective to invest in an emerging economy?
So we do have a very interesting experiences in Latin America. Costa Rica is one example. It's the largest site for Intel in the region. And we do have an engineer design center in Costa Rica, very successful. We continue to attract good talents there because we were there. So we start there and we did not know all the capabilities or competencies that we could have from Costa Rica to develop global projects for Intel. But being there, we were able to understand the capabilities. So this is one thing. It's a first attract, then know, and then we can leverage. Second, very interesting experience for Intel in the region was in Mexico, in Guadalajara. Guadalajara became a kind of a Silicon Valley for the country there. A number of companies are there. And Guadalajara, also Intel is developing what we call the data-centric projects, that what is matter for the company today. So involved in 5G experiences, involved in the new chips for neurological understanding of servers, the deep learning, and this kind of things is very important. So in Argentina, we recently signed an agreement with the Ministry of Modernization to together use IoT to track medicines. So there's a lot of opportunities where the government and policy can leverage this kind of a use of technology, adopt technology, innovative projects that can escalate. For the company, what is important is to see there's a scale in the future. I can do a proof of a competence of with a anywhere, but I need to do that I can scale and I can make money in the future. But I mean, the first stage is exactly find out these specific projects, opportunities, pilots, where the private companies and the government in search the needs that they have for their citizens can find out where to attract and leverage opportunities.
Okay, that's great. It's great to know that you're already investing also in Argentina, Mexico, and Costa Rica, and that we have the capabilities to attract a company like Intel. And one thing that we know that is like we really need to improve the telecommunications networks, we really need to create these data centers. And in that sense, I would like to ask you, Arthur, about what are the key policies that Brazil has nowadays to attract private investment to the deployment of advanced telecommunications networks, and specifically 5G, and what is the role of FDI in this process of private investment to the development of the new advanced telecommunications network?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. In terms of policies to attract investments, it's very important to highlight a subject that happens a lot. It's a problem that many federative countries face, which is with regards to the coordination between the central and the local governments to attract investments, and more than that, in terms of telecommunications infrastructure, that regards to policies that allow a fast and easy deployment of that infrastructure. And that is, I'm talking specific about the rights of way permit that the municipalities must issue, and that kind of problem really was an objection for Google Fiber, for example, to develop as fast as they wanted to. So Google Fiber started in the United States with a very clear proposal, and it dealt with those difficulties of deploying networks in the different municipalities, and so the project had to back up a little bit. So in Brazil in 2015, regarding that specific issue, Brazil passed a law that established some standards and deadlines for those kind of permits, and also forbade the collection of any payment from those network deployments. It was very common for a municipality to charge a fee for that deployment, and that is not allowed anymore. And it's a very important thing regarding this legislation, specifically for 5G, is that it exempts from licenses every small telecommunication
Good
infrastructure.
afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Enjoying your lunch?
Okay, going on.
Okay.
Yes. So probably
We'd just like to take a few minutes of your time to honor
there's some
our...
interference here.
Excuse me? There is an interference in the
Games, which is a
speaker.
very important initiative.
So
We
there's an
appreciate
announcement
their
about a very important
participation
something
and the government.
that is not more important than Latin America and the IAM.
Okay, so going on.
Please, Arthur, sorry about that.
And so every small telecommunications infrastructure is exempt from any license at the municipal level. So if you're thinking about, and that's mainly the 5G infrastructure. We're talking about small cells, smaller antennas that deal with, that work on higher frequencies. And we're also working very close to major cities in Brazil to make them comply with that kind of rules. Also, regarding 5G, Brazil is planning its first 5G auction for the first quarter of 2019, starting with the frequency band of 3.5 gigahertz, which is a very noble band in the 5G spectrum. We have that frequency band practically available in free, and it's just a matter of coordination with TVRO, but it's a very easy matter that they're running right now, and that auction is probably going to happen in the first quarter of next year. So in terms of foreign direct investment, Brazilian economic environment, specifically in telecommunications, is fully liberalized right now. The World Economic Forum recognizes that the telecommunications infrastructure regulation environment in Brazil is the most stable one, and the foreign direct investment represents more than 50% of all investments in telecommunications. So if you allow me the pun, it's the foreign money is precisely the backbone of the telecommunications developed in Brazil.
Okay, well, so now we will go back to the investment promotion agencies. And I would like to know, in the case of Costa Rica, because we know now that the business models are changing, also the investment firms are moving to non-equity modes, and also firm drivers toward the national strategies are also changing. So in this framework, I would like to know which policies is the country now designing for the future, and how is Costa Rica adapting to these new trends, and what do you think are the key future strategies to attract and promote investment to improve the Costa Rican economy?
Thank you, Cecilia. So, we would have to go back here to the same answer over and over again. I mean, the most important and sensible strategy is to develop the talent. If you have the talent, they will come, whether it's in the old forms of investment or the new forms of investment. Let me share you a really good example of how we implemented a very successful new form of investment scheme last year. One of our challenges has been to bring investment and create job creation to areas outside the greater metropolitan areas. Most of the investment in Costa Rica is concentrated in the Central Valley, where the upper middle class and the middle class are stronger, but in the regions outside the greater metropolitan area, where there are less developed regions, more urban regions, it's very hard to bring investment. So there we thought, why don't we use new forms of investment schemes or strategies to reach those people? And what we did is we talked to Amazon. Amazon, I already mentioned them before, is one of the largest employers in Costa Rica. They wanted to continue growing in one of the areas, which was the support services to their vendors and also to the customers out of Costa Rica. So we went to these communities outside the greater metropolitan area, and we, using a software that we had seen they developed, we measured thousands of citizens in those areas to see the level of English that they had. Okay, so with that, we could see if there was a large enough talent pool for people, for companies to hire, even though maybe there weren't enough people to go and establish an operation in each one of those communities. But think of work from home, which is one of those new forms of investment. So after that, together with Amazon, we tested the soft skills that these people had to see if they were the appropriate ones that Amazon required to engage them, and they were not. So we worked with the communities, we worked with academia, we brought courses of those soft skills that were required. Then we had the connectivity challenge, the last mile. A lot of these communities had fiber optics down to the center of town, but maybe not to the people's homes. So we worked with that, with the government agency to a government institution to bring the right connectivity to homes. After all of this, we were able to successfully create over 800 jobs last year outside the greater metropolitan area, which for Costa Rica is a lot of jobs in these areas, for people working from home. So here you have a model that allowed us to create 800 jobs. People don't have to leave their communities to get a good job. People in a remote urban areas in the mountains can be working for one of the highest technology companies in the world, delivering services, to the world from, Osa in Costa Rica, which is this tiny little place in the coast. So, and just like we have this success story, we know for a fact, except that that there are many other companies already engaging Costa Rican talent directly, through the internet without establishing direct operations in Costa Rica. So we don't even know that they're there, but they are. And the other example I use is another company that we engaged and attracted a year and a half ago. It's called Stratus Video. It's a 100% virtual company. They have 200 employees there, over 200 employees. This is a simultaneous translation over video company. And, they established operations there virtually. They engage people, they hire them there virtually, but they don't have an office. They don't have a physical address there. All their employees work from home. So, this is already happening. And what you need to do is really have the right connectivity. Again, we were talking with Federico before the importance of a second language, in our case, English. So if you have connectivity, you have English, you have the right skills. I think that countries can be successful in attracting that type of investment.
Okay, great. So as we understand here, to really attract these investments in high skills employment and to really improve the quality of life, and as also Arthur mentioned, it's really important coordination, right, between different agencies from the government. And there's something that in Latin America was very, polemical in a way, to talk about industrial policy. But this is also something that goes in a way, because if you are seeing the skills of people and trying to really improve them, and you have to talk with ministers of education, and you have to do this kind of very broad policies in order to attract good firms and to give high-wage jobs to the population. And I would like to know, how do you see that from the point of view from Chile, Federico, and how you're working, because earlier you mentioned that you're working from the agency to trying to have like a more broad vision about investments and to bring more political actors together. So I would like to know, how do you work that in Chile?
Sure. The agency, since its inception, was created following certain recommendations from OECD, and one of the recommendations from OECD was precisely what you're pointing out here, is to have a constant interaction with different governmental bodies and also with the private sector. With the private sector, we have a private-public council that we meet twice a year, with high-level representatives from the private sector. And as I mentioned before, since our inception, we are related to 7 different ministries. And by working closely with them, we are allowed and happy to promote different type of incentives, regulations that are necessary in order to boost the investment schemes in our country. That's how we work with the Ministry of Economics, Finance, Energy, Mining, Foreign Affairs, Public Works, and of course with the Ministry of Agriculture. By working closely with them, we can highlight certain issues that we've been detecting, and as well as detecting opportunities from those ministries, to be promoted abroad.
Well, and also, what opportunities do you see now? Because we talk a lot about the future, but what opportunities do you see now in terms of new businesses in Chile?
In terms of new businesses, as I mentioned, we are looking for investments and we are seeing opportunities in technology. We're seeing opportunities in certain niches, such as astronomics, for instance. It's not known, but Chile concentrates 70% of global investment in astronomy, and that is something that we're happily promoting abroad, as well as promoting investments in high-tech and fintech. And we have a couple of cases of some startups, we will discuss about that later, that were one of them acquired by Walmart, was an online platform to help consumers to get their purchase in supermarkets that was quite successful and was acquired by Walmart, as I mentioned, as well as another company that is developing, is called Notco, that is using technology to create products using natural ingredients. So for instance, they managed to develop mayonnaise without using the eggs, and by using technology and creating you can taste it and actually taste like mayonnaise, and now they're developing milk as well as yogurt. And Jeff Bezos, 3 weeks ago, decided to invest $30 million in that company. Those are the type of initiatives and companies that we want to detect early, to promote and to bring to investors in the world.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, I think that Chile has one very good experience in terms of startups, and they have a very famous program too. And so I would like to know, from the point of view of Intel, how do you see, or how do you try to improve the relation with the local suppliers with your investments in Latin America? Because this is something that we always talk about. When you attract FDI, you have technology spillovers, you create a relation with the local suppliers, and this is the way that FDI will help the development of the host economies. So in that sense, has Intel some initiatives around the world to do that, or how do you manage that as a company?
Sure. Well, it's very, very important for Intel. I mean, the kind of a company like Intel that we do not sell for the end users, right? So we work with the ecosystems, with others that will use our products to do theirs, including solutions and so forth. So one of the first things that Intel does everywhere is work with the local community, the local developers. So we do have a very large program for developers in one side. Second is to identify these new technologies that are relevant to Intel and that we can incorporate in our products later. So then we have the Intel Capital arm that is exactly to work with the startups in the different countries to identify those that have a relevant technologies that can be part of the Intel business interests and invest early in their ecosystems. And then also we do kind of a programs to incentivize and to identify those local companies that have a different kind of a thinking and may have a solution. So we do have a programs like Makers, where we offer our platform. So those developers, those companies, even those peoples they can use the platforms to create different things. So we do it globally, and then we have a kind of a global challenge at the end to identify those projects worldwide that are I mean, fantastic, not only to Intel, that can be used for other companies or any other countries. So there's several tools and programs that we do have to work and develop the ecosystems in different countries.
During the seminar, during this meeting, there was an issue that moving across all of the panel, that was skills. You speak about Costa Rica, said clearly talent. Talent is a broad word, but what is about the skills? Many times we said a lot about the importance of skill and everything, but when we look at the movement of foreign direct investing in Latin America are very related to term of trade, prices of commodity. Not the case of Costa Rica, probably, but the other countries are very related to that. How the countries and the agencies have to move, and what want the private sector, which is the skill that we need, require in the near future to face the new type of investment. Clearly, we're speaking about 5G, okay? 5G is becoming an issue that is a debate in the world economy because there is a position on China side, American one, Latin America remain in the middle, skills, 5G, infrastructure, regulation. How the countries accept these issues and how are debating this in the country to formulate the new policy. But this time I'm asking before what the private sector need to do that and moving on the other side. Please, Intel.
Yeah, that's interesting. You use a very, very, very recent issue that we have, and it was working with the government in Mexico, in Guadalajara, because we do have a design center there. We do use a lot of power, so we need qualified human resources, and we need to have a pipeline of talent. And we work kind of in an issue there. So we had this work with the local government, the state government in case of Mexico, Jalisco, and the academias around there. And we work together in what kind of skills that we need, that Intel needs for our projects in the data-centric kind of things, the 5G, artificial intelligence. And we develop, or with the help of a government and the academia, specific programs to make sure that we have a timeline, not just now, but in the medium long term. That's a need. We do have a similar things in Brazil, and we work together with the sector and with the government. We have a lack of close to 1 million people that the different ecosystems could hire today. And we have a lot of people. The unemployment in Brazil is big, but we don't have the right people with the right skills. So this is a cooperation with the industries and the government to find out, hey, this is the size of the problem, this is what we need in terms of skills, and this is kind of the work with the academia to prepare and make people available to be hired.
You said we need to create a local system of innovation, something like that. Have to support, they have to do. Taking the case of Chile. Chile, of course, is a country that has a good recent experience, but at the end of the history, there is new investment in sustainable energy. But copper and natural resources remain the main focus. That is good, but it's not enough. How the country, or how the agency is moving to give those skill and infrastructure and regulation. The law, the recent law on data and privacy and data is important one, but how you are moving on that field?
It's a very good question. We are aware that Chile cannot maintain itself as an export-centered economy and to keep depending on copper. That's very true. But also, we are aware that our capabilities in mining are excellent, and we're exporting services to our neighbor countries, as well as to Canada, to Australia, and also to detecting opportunities in mining, but in different minerals, such as lithium, for instance. During these days, we are preparing the public tender. We're going to promote the public tender for lithium, because lithium is a resource that is owned and controlled by the government, by the state of Chile. And that is going to happen during the course of this year. And in terms of other type of industries that we're trying to promote is 5G. During this week and next week, the Ministry of Telecommunications will be promoting the public tender in 5G in China and also in Korea. So we're aware of that, we're working on it, and as you were saying, it's more than just passing laws. We have to work very hard in order to detect and to promote the other opportunities that we have as a country.
You put one, I agree with that, 5G, but you make a specific work that is becoming one of the most important gold standard, that is lithium. Lithium is a resource that there is there in Chile, there is in Bolivia a lot, there is Argentina, there is part in Peru. Recently, Australia discovered an important mining industry on there. Now, in this case, how Chile can modify, reproduce another production system, more creating network, value chain. What's happened on that? How is the new? There is a new strategy, or we remain on the same plateau?
Well, part of the requirements for this tender is not to simply extract the lithium as it used to. It needs to bring new technologies. It needs to be sustainable. It needs to be concentrated in technologies that could bring more value to our economy. We don't want to keep exporting lithium. We want to keep the lithium and to add value within the country. With the hope to, in a couple of years, to be exporting the lithium batteries. But the battery is constructed ensembling different parts. Those parts cannot be made in Chile at 100%. But we are aware that we have a network of free trade agreements that will help us to bring those parts at a very reasonable cost in order to assemble lithium batteries within the country. Those are the type of initiatives that have to be implemented following the lines of thoughts that you have.
Thank you. Now, there is Costa Rica. Costa Rica has an enormous similarity about manufacturing sector than Mexico, but Costa Rica, the dimension of the country is small, but it's a very successful one because created what we can call an innovation system, where you have the Universidad Nacional, that is an important pillar, you have the history of Intel, that is an important pillar, you have transformed the industry, for example, of medical instrumentation that has been exported. I want to say that is enough, or you don't need more industrial and technological policy to create it, local value chains to get more deeper industry, national deeper industry to support exporting manufacturing sector. How you are moving on that? Because there is an enormous opportunity, but we think if the country can understand that they have to move the frontier and the value chain. What they are doing on that?
Yes, it's a very interesting topic. Let me just move back 1 second to talk about that success story that you mentioned of Costa Rica, because Intel really is a fundamental part of Costa Rica's history and of that success story. It's a before and after. You know, when Intel came to Costa Rica, it puts us on the map, and that talent pool in which Costa Rica had invested for centuries, literally, and particularly since we abolished the army by constitution 70 years ago and started investing that in health and education, that talent pool hadn't really been tapped until Intel came to Costa Rica. And Intel told the world, you know what? There's a lot of very talented people there that you can do. And so thanks to that, Costa Rica has been able to attract today over 300 multinational high-tech companies and med-tech device companies that have transformed our economy from an economy that was 80% agricultural products, basically coffee, banana, sugar, and meat, into an economy today that exports over 4,000 different products to 160 different destinations. 50% almost of our exports today are services. Of those, the most important sector precisely in which Intel plays today, because they transformed their operation from a manufacturing or what they call final assembly and testing facility to a more R&D and services and center of excellence facility today, we exported $4.5 billion worth of IT-related and IT-enabled services. That's the number one export sector. The second one is MedTech devices, $3.3 billion. Just as a reference, coffee was about $300 million. That means that we exported 11 times more in medical devices and 15 times more in high-tech services than we did in coffee. So, you know, I didn't want to mention this in terms of the success story that we've been talking about Costa Rica, because probably the people that are here today in this room didn't know how we have really transformed. So, yes, we do have a challenge in the industrial sector because Costa Rica is not a low-cost geography. We don't attract companies because we are low-cost or we have low salaries. We attract them because we have high-quality people. That means that the type of industry we can attract, other than services, of course, in the industry is, you know, low volume, high mix, high sophistication type of industries, which is precisely what the med sector is so successful there. We also have in the aerospace sector, we have some of the automotive sector. For example, electronic components for the Teslas are being developed in Costa Rica. Electronic components for the Boeing airplanes and for Airbus airplanes, some of them are being, and software is being developed for aerospace in Costa Rica. But that's really, that's the part of the global chain, you know, in which Costa Rica can participate. We are very aware that we will never compete with Mexico in low-cost, high-volume type of thing, you know, producing the pipes for the cars or that type of thing. We don't even try to compete in that space because we can't. So that's why, answering your question, for us, it's so important to become a part of the Pacific Alliance, because it would open that market for us even more than it is today, because we have free trade agreements with the 4 countries of the Pacific Alliance, but it would facilitate even more, you know, being able to integrate Costa Rica into those regional value chains. As we heard the Secretary General of UNCTAD say, you know, those global value chains are really becoming shorter and shorter, globally speaking, and becoming more regional value chains. And so Costa Rica does want to play a role there, and it's fundamental that we become a part of the Pacific Alliance.
I agree with you. This is a very successful cases where the economy was completely transformed. It's the same that the case of Chile. That's the reason you have here. I want to go to the most largest economy in Latin America, Brazil. And I want to ask to you, Brazil has put it recently together 2 ministers, Ministry of Telecommunication and Science and Technology together. Is there any opportunity to transform, there is a plateau, transform the policy of attraction of new investment? There is putting together science and technology and telecommunication, thinking about the importance of digital economy and research and industry. What is the idea of that? How new opportunity taking this political transformation is going to be an important step for Brazil? Is there or not?
Well, it sure is, Mario. Now we have this this sole ministry for dealing with science and technology innovation and telecommunications. And well, our digital transformation plan gained a lot of that, especially all the skills, the policy directed to improving the skills that are designed in the plan, and that some of them involve working with universities, but some of them involves working the basis of the educational levels. And well, it's important to also to notice that digital economy is not a different thing from the economy itself. It's just a new way that the economy, the normal economy, is working. It's working on digital platforms. And especially about that, well, Brazil has a strong agribusiness dynamics. It exports a lot of agricultural goods, and I believe that's our biggest challenge regarding productivity increase and also skill developing. That is, although they count 75% of all 70 million households in Brazil have access to the internet, in rural areas that number is only 40%. So it's much lower than the national average, and that's especially important to look at if you really want to improve our rural productivity. We have to bring infrastructure to rural areas and allow it with our national digital transformation plan and a specific IoT development plan to make agriculture more to make it more profitable and to make it more to make it bigger, even bigger than it is. Although it's already a very competitive sector in Brazil, it's important to make it develop with those digital transformation initiatives.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much. We would like now to open the floor to the audience. So if any of you see a question there, Prashant, where is, so please can you send him the microphone? Thank you. And the Deputy Executive Secretary of ICLAC had to leave because he's playing back home, so that's why he left the panel.
Thanks.
So
Thanks.
please introduce yourself, your organization, and your question.
Thanks, Cecilia. Can you hear me? Yep. Nope. Can you hear me? Yep. Okay, my name is Fernando Gutierrez. I represent Bureau van Dijk, that is part of Moody's Analytics.
Can you make the mic louder, please? It's not possible to hear him.
Hello?
Oh,
that's
now
too-
we hear you.
The whole event can hear me now. Thank you, Cecilia. My name is Fernando. I represent Bureau van Dijk from Moody's Analytics, and this is a question for Federico and Fernando. First for Federico, which would be your ideal startup venture to attract to the program of Startup Chile? Or if you don't have an idea, which is a recent success story in the last year for a startup? And for Fernando, can you tell us maybe a case study of the last, well, a success story in the last years that you have partnered with a startup in terms of new technology in Latin America? Thanks.
Thank you and it's great to hear that that program is known and well known all over. And in terms of success stories, the company that I was mentioning before is certainly one of them. It's called NotCo. I invite you to Google it and search for it. The reasons is that they brought technology and knowledge from abroad. There are 3 partners. Only one is Chilean. The others are from other parts of the world. Of course, they came through the program, and the success of this company in particular is not their business model. Is basically the knowledge they brought to the country and the industry they decided to develop in Chile. Chile is well known for being an export-oriented economy for food, fresh fruit, wines, etc. And it was quite interesting to find a company that is developing food from others, not using food basically. So to have mayonnaise without using eggs was something that was quite appealing for all of us to help. In terms of what is ideal for us, since we are going very heavily for the 5G, we're actually, and also in complementing to the 5G initiatives, Chile is about to start building a couple of submarine cables to connect with Asia. And there is one cable that is going to be connecting Valparaiso with California in a project that is jointly made with Google. So the type of company that will be ideal for us will be a company or a startup related with 5G technologies, because 5G will help and boost communication, of course, but the industries and businesses that are surrounding 5G technology and IoT is certainly something that will be quite interesting for us to have.
Thank you. Well, it's just to talk about the Guadalajara. It was interesting for Intel because, in fact, it started with a local startup with a brilliant mind that Intel hired. And this person with this startup today is the Guadalajara Design Center with over 1,500 people. And the new areas that are quite important to Intel on AI, on data center there. So what we do to continue spread out innovation there was the creation. We have now 12 IoT labs to the cloud. So IoT to the cloud labs. So the idea is to spread innovation from there. It's a very recent, just started, but in few months or less than 1 year, we have over 100 patents already there due to that. So there's a number of ideas to spread out the innovation through Guadalajara using already what we have there. But more important than that was exactly this, was sometimes, to point to Jorge, we start with something and we find other opportunities just to be there. So the most important thing is first to attract. Then you can give the opportunity that you have, understand all the capabilities, and certainly we find out ways to grow.
Okay, thank you. So do we have another question from the others? Yes, please.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Asma Janahi from Expo 2020. So I have a question for all of the panelists. So basically, what are companies in Latin America or the governments there looking or expecting from UAE companies? So what type of investments are you looking for, or specifically in which type of sectors do you think UAE companies can excel in Latin America?
Hi, thank you for the question. We're open. We're an open economy. We're open to all type of companies, but we know that UAE, of course, have certain competitive advantages. And just the recent case of Dubai Ports, for instance, it really opens the door for other companies to explore the region, not only Chile, because Chile is a country, is a small market, but it's used as a platform for the region itself. So we are aware of the capabilities that Dubai has in terms of logistics, for instance, which is fantastic. In terms of construction, we have some companies that we have been meeting actually yesterday in Abu Dhabi that are related to big infrastructure projects. We want to bring those type of capabilities to our country, to invite them to participate in public bidding processes, to build our ports, our airports, our roads, and basically big infrastructure projects. We are impressed that UAE was a country that 50 years ago didn't even exist. And look what is evident, that the capabilities are concentrated in what we've been discussing and mentioning here. We will be more than happy to have those capabilities working together with us in our country.
Yes, thank you for your question. In our case, yes. In fact, as we speak, there's a delegation from DP World today in Costa Rica this week. visiting certain areas of the country. Because in our case, we also see obviously an opportunity for infrastructure development. Costa Rica, the current administration announced 6 months ago a very ambitious $5 billion program over the next 7 years to develop our roads and infrastructure, which we urgently need to do. And obviously, the expertise that you have developed here, like Federico well said, could be very useful for us, not only from the financial point of view, but also from the expertise of developing that infrastructure. There's opportunities for regional airports, there's opportunities for a cruise port, there are many areas. Then I think we can also learn a lot from Dubai in terms of innovation, startups, what you're doing. Last night I was I had the privilege of having dinner with Fahad from Dubai FDI at the restaurant at the Emirates buildings, and he took us there and showed us all that you've done and built all that infrastructure for developing, for startups and even for nursery, for kids. I was so impressed that they're allowing kids at 4 years old to start innovating, and you say, well, you guys are really thinking way ahead. And you have a whole innovation center, the 10X Innovation Center, the Center for Dubai 2071, I believe it is, right? 2071. You're looking 50 years ahead. So I think that there's a lot that Dubai can teach the rest of the world, not only Latin America, in terms of forward-looking, of being ambitious and having these large targets. You have an artificial intelligence minister, I don't think there's any other country in the world that has, at least that I know of, that has an artificial intelligence ministry. So, these are the areas where we think that Costa Rica in particular could benefit very much from Dubai.
So, from a Brazilian perspective, I can tell you that investment in infrastructure is very important for us, not only in telecommunications infrastructure, but in general. And that's why in the following years, Brazil is going to privatize a lot of its main infrastructures. We're talking about highways, we're talking about electric companies, and also airports. And well, any investment is welcome there. We have done recently some very well succeed concessions of airports just a few weeks ago. I think the rules of the auctions are much clearer than ever. I think that the investment conditions and the return on investment, it's also very well designed. I think it's a very good environment right now to invest in Brazil.
Thank you. So we have time for one more question. Yes, please.
Oh, thank you. That was fast. Thank you. My name is Johan Abdullah, President of IOSI. My organization is a non-for-profit, and we are an international organization regarding defense and security. However, my question is going regarding if there's any initiative on, with this revolution of 5G for cybersecurity in the area, in the region. I know the Inter-American Defense Board, based from the Organization of American States, they are they're going to have a conference in May from all the armed forces from the Latin American and Caribbean regarding cybersecurity. So it's just a question to what, if so, any initiative regarding some kind of a regional or hemispheric cooperation on cybersecurity. And just another point is, I've been traveling around the world, including Africa, and that's something that we want to encourage the governments and private sector in Latin America to start on this program for coding for kids. It's just an amazing program. I don't know if there's anything going on in Latin America, but it's very normal. I mean, like a lot in Europe, Canada, and United States, but it's amazing a way to start educating and creating a new expert and professional from a very young age. Thank you so much.
Each of the panelists want to respond about, it was an open question.
Oh, so yes, 5G and And IoT, they bring a huge challenge in terms of cybersecurity, since all your life is going to be connected, and all your devices and everything you have. But I'll attain myself specifically to the second part of your question regarding the coding for kids. Well, Brazil in its digital transformation plan has very specifically that target of bringing code closer to the kids' schools. But in the sense that coding is not a different thing from what they learn today. It's just applied logic. It's just applied math. So it's either a way to improve learning of mathematics and logic, and also a way of bringing to them a new skill that is truly important nowadays. And that perspective is very important in our digital transformation plan.
So regarding your cybersecurity regional cooperation question, I don't know, I'm not aware of any such initiative. Internally into Costa Rica, yes, we're very focused on that. In fact, we received the AIM Award at the gala dinner precisely because of a cybersecurity project. IBM has about 3,000 people in Costa Rica. Of those, a big chunk are related to cybersecurity. And they have one of the largest cybersecurity centers in the world in Costa Rica. So together with them, with Citi, with Intel's help, with many other companies, we're building a cluster with academia and with government support to establish a whole country strategy around cybersecurity. But I am not aware of a regional strategy. The second part, unfortunately, I have to say that at least in Costa Rica today, we don't have at secondary or primary level a standardized, well-spread coding program. Many of the, in schools, many of the private schools have it already. And so you have kids in primary school, learning with Lego or with other technologies how to program. But it's not widespread yet. And if you ask me, I think that for the kids of the next generation, learning how to code is as important as learning how to read and write, quite honestly. So this is something that we from CINDE have been pushing very hard with the Ministry of Education to turn it into a mandatory assignment for kids in high school. But we're not there yet, I have to be very honest.
Thank you.
Just my view there, because it's a very, very important topic. When we talk about all this digital transformation, digital agenda, digital strategies, we do need to have on the trust side, we do need to have the privacy for data, but also the security for data. And cybersecurity plays a tremendous role there on IoT, on artificial intelligence, so we need to. The only concern that we have as a company is that each country decides to have its own cybersecurity strategy or plan or standards. Then we do have a problem, a scale problem, a problem to reach all the markets, cost to the certification and so forth. So to your point, to have this international standard harmonization of a cybersecurity plans, it's really important on the private sector view. For instance, Brazil had 2 or 3 years ago a decree that would permit government to have access to the source code. It was a tremendous discussion. It was revoked. There's no longer these things because, of course, even for the country, it's not a good idea. It can prevent, but then we do not have how to reach the new technologies. Nobody will put technologies in a country where you can have your source code open. So we need to have work as Intel proposed the privacy by design, we propose the security by design, and from the early stages we need to have to design everything from hardware, software, having in mind the privacy and the security of the data, but we do need to have this kind of a coordination globally to avoid a different approach to cybersecurity that I agree it's a tremendously very important issue.
Yes, and in terms of regional cooperation for cybersecurity, we're not aware that there is a stabilized cooperation. But since Chile is part of the OECD, there are certain standards that Chile has to comply with, and there are certain industries that are, of course, more obliged to comply with those regulations and rules, especially banking. And as is the public sector as well, we'll have to comply with certain rules and regulations regarding cybersecurity. So that is the way to pay attention to what Chile is doing, basically. And if you look into the new banking rules that are in the Congress now to be approved, are actually related in part to cybersecurity. And regarding the other part of your question and things that we've been discussing here in this panel, we started to discuss about the need of human capital or tools, and we were discussing about languages, barriers, to have bilingual citizens in our countries in order to better adapt and to compete in this globalized world. But there are other things as well that Chile has been detecting and that have been included in the study plans for public schools, which is programming, for instance. Programming is something that Chile is aware that has to be included in the program of education, and in something that has been put there in order to better compete in this globalized world.
Well, and I will add something from the Economic Commission for Latin America. So we have the Ministerial Conference on Digital Society, and I know they're discussing the topic of cybersecurity on regional terms, so it's something that we're going to provide the space for all the countries in Latin America to discuss about it. So we're reaching the end now, and to finish with, I would like to all the panelists to just as was did in other panels. So to summarize in one short sentence, why we should invest in Latin America? What do you think the region is special? And so we can close the panel with that. So please, starting whoever wants.
So thank you again for the opportunity. And I think that for the UAE, Latin America represents a land of opportunity, literally. The data we saw yesterday or the day before from where the Gulf money is being invested says that only about 1.7% of the outgoing FDI from Dubai goes to Latin America. And that's very little, because Latin America has a lot to offer in all different areas. I mean, countries as huge as Brazil or Mexico to small countries like Costa Rica, and in the middle, very successful or success stories like Chile's, I mean, have a lot of opportunities in infrastructure, in clean energy, in sustainability, in IT, in innovation. So, open your minds to looking at this new area. It's getting easier and easier to reach Latin America with flights, that connect very easily. Like at least in our case, you just go with code sharing directly, one stop in the US and then direct to Costa Rica. It makes it easier and easier. So, I think there's a lot of opportunities for all kinds of potential investments. So, take a look.
Yes, I mean, I'm talking specifically about Brazil. Well, Brazil has a huge economy, and is just living a very tough period economically speaking. The very hard years, in which the country decreased its GDP a little bit. And now all the reforms that are coming to be made in the next month, and all the economic policies that are being adopted, they are pointing to a new period of growth that shall work for several years. So I think that if you're planning to invest in Brazil, probably the moment is right now. I mean, you shouldn't wait 6 or 7 years if you want to take the best opportunities.
I would like to say that more than rankings and stability and numbers that probably will be forgotten after a few minutes, there are certain things that really highlights what Chile is. Chile is open. Chile is a country that, as well as the UAE, can surprise you. We certainly can surprise you guys if you have the chance to go there. There are a couple of things that are quite interesting to know about. Chile has a very important population of an Arab and a very important and prominent Arab community. And that community is very well positioned within our country. And of course, those guys could be more than helpful for you guys to receive you and welcome you. We're here to help, to boost, to learn from your needs, and to help them to be satisfied. And thank you for the opportunity for inviting me here.
Well, just as a private company and investor in the region, I would say that, well, in Latin America, there's tremendous opportunities for Intel and for any company that really goes to the region. And once in the world is in the early stages of a digital transformation, and Latin America is in the same process, it's amazing to see how the different countries there are embracing this new strategy for digital transformation and proposing all those pillars that is very important to make it happen. So I agree, at least in the technology sector, the opportunity is huge, and we are very happy to be an investor in the region.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So we're finishing now, and well, I will also welcome you on a personal level to visit Latin America. It's a beautiful continent, beautiful people, beautiful countries. And so we give a warm applause to our panelists, and thank you to the IM for this opportunity. So we're closing the panel. Thank you.